You're listening to My First Ride podcast. On this episode, I'm going to talk about why I'm developing this podcast. Do you remember your first ride? You know, the first mode of transportation that gave you a newfound freedom. Think about it. What do you remember about your first ride? Hello, my name's Gary Neidert, host of My First Ride podcast. I would be thrilled to have you as a guest on my show. It's an online audio program spotlighting the stories of people's taste of freedom with their first vehicle, whether it's a car, a truck, a motorcycle. We all have some great memories that need to be shared. Now, I wanted to give you a little idea of how this all came about, the why I started My First Ride podcast. I'd been thinking about what can I do? Because I like cars. I'm a car guy without a car to tinker on. But I wanted to get to do something. And podcasting, I've already got another podcast. And so I thought, well, I can do a podcast on cars. And then I ran across this story. And I want to tell you a little bit about the story. It's probably 2017 when I first read this. But it's a story about Stephen Weber in Longmont, Colorado. Now, he told stories of riding in his sister's Mustang when he was 14 years old, which that started his appreciation for cars. In 1973, he bought a 68 Camaro instead of a GTO, which the GTO is what he was really wanting to buy. But in this process, he was talking to his dad about what he wanted. Well, Stephen was working at a gas station. His dad brought a 68 Camaro to the gas station where Stephen worked to show it to him. And the big thing was about this, it was that his dad brought him the Camaro to look at. That meant something to Stephen. And it was a little less money than the GTO. Well, he bought the car. And life goes on. After high school, he joined the Air Force. He got out in 1980. Now, after he got out, he was back home in Longmont, Colorado. While driving his pickup, he was T-boned and suffered a massive closed head injury. And he was in a coma for several days. Well, he recovered from all that. But sometimes, as it happens with a closed head injury like that, there can be consequences later on in life. And after 40 years, almost 40 years after the accident, the injury continued to affect him. Well, this article that I saw on Jalopnik, and Stephen Obachowski, I think the guy's name is, that wrote this. And I really appreciate the work that he did on this article. And I'll have a link to the article that you could read. But when the article was written about Stephen, he was 60 years old, and because of the head injury from years ago, it was causing his cognitive function to decline, even to the point of not being able to work as an electrician. And he was sought after in the community for the work that he did. And it got to the point where he couldn't even keep up with the continuing education classes and the things that he had to do to recertify to be an electrician. And it was really hard on him. So it goes on, and I'm shortening this story up a whole lot. That's why I'm going to include the link on this so you can go read the complete article. He tells stories about his Camaro, his plans to pass it along to his son, and some of his experiences he shared with his dad with the Camaro. Now, the sad part of this is Steve knows the day is coming. The memory of all this is going to slip away. And in fact, that's that was starting to happen. Unfortunately, when the memory slips away, so do the stories of his Camaro, his dad, and his son. That story made a huge impact on me. And I realized there are a lot of stories that need to be told about people and their first rides, whether it's a car, a truck, or a motorcycle. I know I have very fond memories of my first vehicle. It was a 64 Volkswagen convertible, the British racing green with a black top, a black interior, had chrome wheels on it, and I thought it was something else. And I had so much fun with that car, had a lot of great memories. So I've decided to develop this podcast where people talk about their memories of their first vehicles. So what I want to do, I want to start off, each episode will post every 2 weeks or so. Then later on, I'll post an episode weekly on the website, My First Ride Podcast, as well as iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. Now, you probably have a very busy schedule, so the whole process to do this would be very easy. I would love to have you as a guest on this program. It'll be about a 30 to 40 minute conversation recorded over Zoom.us. And right now, just about everybody knows about Zoom, right? And it doesn't have to be a video. We can do it. I'll be recording through Zoom, but if you don't have the Zoom video access, we can do it by phone or whatever. But we'll talk about what your first vehicle was, the memories attached to that time in your life, and what kind of an impact it had on you later in life. And it doesn't matter if your first ride was 5, 20, 30 years ago or more. What does matter is that you share the stories. If you have fond memories of your first ride, it's time to tell those stories and what it meant to you. Stories you can tell your kids and your grandkids. Although there are some stories that probably need to remain untold. Would you be open to participating? Telling your story. If yes, I would like to schedule a time where we can record our conversation. You can contact me at myfirstridepodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me at 972-771-7899. If you're watching this on Facebook, message me, and we'll start the process of setting up to where we can record your story and share it on the podcast and through all the different podcast avenues. Final thought. You may not have your first ride, but you still have the memories, and it's time to share them. Thanks so much for your consideration. I'm Gary Neidert, host of My First Ride Podcast. Remember to like and share on Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and more. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.